So this is Garmin's Edge 1050, the company's newest, biggest and most expensive GPS bike computer ever made. It's packed with tech that promises to outshine the competition. Quite literally, it has the brightest screen I've ever seen on any GPS bike computer. But at £650, is it really worth it? Well, after 2,500 kilometers of testing around the world, I've uncovered its best features and a few quirks too. From its ultra bright screen to its impressive battery life and loads of features, could this be the ultimate upgrade for your handlebars? Let's dive in and find out. And for clarity, this video is not sponsored by Garmin at all. They loaned me the device for the last few months to test, and after this video goes live, it's going in the box and in the post and back to Southampton, where Garmin are based here in the UK. So this is really more than a minor update over the old 1040, which is still available, even though the actual size is about the same. The big change is the screen, all new, and boy, is this thing bright. From minimal brightness up to maximum brightness. It's brighter and more vibrant than any GPS bike computer I've ever used. And the max brightness is almost the same as an iPhone, 1000 nits. And that brightness does have some benefits. It makes it really easy to see the data on the screen in any conditions, whether riding in bright sunlight, where it does perform very well, or riding in low light where it's dark. You can set the brightness to auto and it does it for you, or manual control if you prefer, which I do prefer. But here's the thing, over the last few months of testing, I rarely ride with it on max brightness. It's just too bright. So I often run a screen about halfway down, about 50%, and even then it's still bright and it's still brighter than other devices and still easy to see the data on the screen. And that helps the battery life too. On which point, Garmin claim 20 hours in regular use and up to 60 hours in battery saving mode. But you can eke out some impressive run times on the computer. So for example, to test the battery run time, I did a 3-day bikepacking trip down to New Forest and back, and despite following a route on every single day and having a heart rate monitor and a power meter sensor connected to the device, the battery lasted for 3 days, and when I got back home, it still had hours to spare. And all I did to eke out that battery life was run the brightness down to about 20–25%. And that run time did blow me away. And in more regular use, the battery lasts for ages as well. So right now, I'm at 63% on the battery, and that gives me a predicted, estimated 37 hours of runtime. So that's a pretty amazing aspect of the computer. The battery can last almost as long as your adventures need to be. But if you want massive runtime, the Garmin Edge 1040 Solar, which is still available, is the one to go for, or even the Chorus Jura beats it. But for me, 20 to 30 hours are more than enough for most cycling activities. That's a few weeks of riding, and there's nothing worse than when you're going out for a ride and you turn your computer on and you haven't charged it and the battery's down to like 12%. But with this, it's always on 50, 40, 60%, and even down to 20%, I know I can do a few hours ride and it'll still be just fine. So that's a really cool feature, and that's why the device is the size it is, why it's so much bigger than a 830 like this one here. So if you want the runtime, you have to have the big device for the battery. Most of it is battery. But then you get the benefits of the big screen. And this touchscreen is a joy to use. It's very responsive, nicely responsive, and probably the closest in my experience to a smartphone yet. Not quite on an iPhone level, but very close, and closer than a Karoo, the Chorus and other devices I've tested over the last few months. And it is a good job the touchscreen works as well as it does, because there are very few buttons around it. You've got the power button, you've got your lap button and your stop-start button there, but that's it. I would prefer to have some more buttons like a Wahoo, so you don't have to use a touchscreen, you have the option to use buttons or touchscreen, because sometimes when you're riding along, pressing a button is easier than trying to swipe the screen. And there are lots of ways to swipe the screen, up, down, from the bottom, left, right. So it can get a bit confusing having so many swiping options, and sometimes pressing a button is a bit easier. So that's my only gripe. The touchscreen is good, very responsive, but I do miss having the option of buttons down the side as well. And there is space on the unit for buttons, and none down that side at all. So yeah, I would prefer to see that, but let me know what you think by dropping a comment down below. So the screen and the battery are two very compelling reasons to choose a new Garmin Edge 1050, but they do come at the expense of the size. It's a big computer, and I personally prefer a smaller computer on my handlebars, like an 830 or even the Wahoo Element Bolt or Roam. But I must admit, following a route on a bigger screen is easier and definitely a nicer experience with a bigger screen as well. And a screen as bright and responsive as this does make the experience of using the computer very nice indeed. Now, Garmin is notorious, shall we say, for cramming features into its computers, and far too many for me personally, and too many to cover in this video. Go to DC Rainmaker for a 40,000 word review on every single feature. I'll cover stuff I like and some of the stuff I think is a bit gimmicky in my personal opinion. So stuff like contactless payments, I've got that on my smartphone, don't need it on my computer as well. And all the group ride features, in-ride messaging and leaderboards during riding, yeah, that's a bit naff to me. I don't want to be messaged by somebody else with a Garmin when I'm riding. I talk to them when I'm riding side by side. Don't need that. That's a bit gimmicky for me, but you might like a feature. It's there if you want it. You can have it or avoid it if you want. And another gimmick, or so I thought, is a bell. It got loads of headlines when it launched because there's now a speaker on the unit. And let me show you. So simply you press on the screen, you get this menu here, and you tap the button. It's quite a high-pitched, shrill bell. And to see if it worked, I went along a shared use path in Bristol, and I was expecting the tinny sound to be ineffective, but I was pleasantly surprised at how effective it actually was. Probably half the time people heard it and would step aside and allow me to pass them safely. The other half the time it's joggers and runners with headphones on, they can't hear it anyway, so not loud enough for that situation. And you can, because it's 2 steps to press that, you can assign that bell to a Shimano or SRAM bonus button on the brake lever hoods if you want. So that's definitely a useful feature if you are commuting on a regular basis and you are using shared use paths with pedestrians and dog walkers and other people. So that's useful. And why have a bell on a computer? Well, many bikes, especially race bikes, have a nice one-piece area handlebar and stem, which you definitely can't fit a bell to. So this solves that problem of having a bell on your fancy aero race bike. So yeah, it's actually a feature I've been surprised at. I don't use it as much as I probably would do if I was commuting in London like I used to. But yeah, it's actually surprisingly useful. Another new feature which I found less than useful is being able to report road hazards and see ones that other cyclists have shared if you're using a Garmin Edge 1050. So this works in a similar way to Waze or Google Maps. When you're driving, you can report traffic, roadworks, and the same idea, same concept. So simply put, you press a screen and you go to hazard. So you have the option to alert to an animal, obstruction, slippery road surface, or a pothole. And a pothole is probably the most obvious one, given how many potholes we all have to deal with on a daily basis. So you simply press the pothole button and click report, and that's it. So nice idea in theory, but lots of downside. It only works on a 1050, and it doesn't work on Wahoo or Hammerhead, and you are relying on enough people using the feature for it to be useful, and right now there aren't enough people using it to really unleash its full potential. And the other downside is I can count at least 20 potholes before the end of my road. That's just the end of my road. 20 potholes, I counted them the other day, there are that many. So I'll be tapping that button all the damn time. And the other problem, when I was riding out the other day, I've not had many alerts come up, but the other day I was riding through the woods, and the road goes through the woods, and a pothole alert came up in about, I think like 200 meters. But in the countdown to that hazard ahead of me, I lost count of the number of potholes I passed before I reached the alerted pothole. And when I got there, it was a tiny pothole anyway. So you almost need some sort of scale for a pothole to be worth reporting in terms of size, depth, and a rating out of 10. So yes, a nice idea in theory, and if everybody used it, it could be really useful. But right now, I don't think it's very useful at all. But that might change in the future. As with most Garmin Edge devices, there are a whole bunch of training and workout features in here as well. I don't really use that sort of stuff, so I haven't really tested them, but it's there if you want it. I do like the fact there is all that feature set in there, and you can pick and choose as much or as little as you want. And for me, I've pretty much turned most stuff off and use the very basic stuff for the riding I do. I like how easy customizing the data screens is now, the number of screens you have and what data is on those screens as well. And the ones I quite like are the pedaling dynamics, if you have a dual-sided power meter, and what's great with a pedal-based system as well, so you can really measure your left-right power balance. I like the one showing your estimated stamina and distance as well. That's useful for sort of gauging how well you're feeling on any given day. And you have lots of really colourful animations that really employ the hardware, the processing power, and the colourful screen to give you some really cool metrics that you might find really appealing or you might find a bit overkill, but there's stuff in there you can customize it to your heart's content. I do like how you can quickly change any data set on the page simply by pressing and holding that panel, go into the menu, choose what you want to display, and it's done. Very quick, very simple. You don't have to dive through loads of menus to change that. It's very easy indeed. So that's the beauty of the Garmin. You have all the features if you want them, or like me, you can turn most of them off and enjoy a very simple device that doesn't overwhelm you, doesn't bombard you with too much data and too many features. I guess adding more features, cramming the features in does boost the value of money. You are getting lots of potential from here, whether doing workouts, training, racing, navigation. It's all there if you want it. Arguably, one of the main reasons for choosing the 1050 is a bigger screen for navigation and following a route. And I do enjoy following routes on the Garmin, especially this new screen, the brightness. And I had no issues during my testing following a route. The turn by turn is accurate, on time, on point, and it reroutes you around a diversion or closed road very quickly indeed. The speed at which it reroutes you is very quick indeed. So you don't have to stop, you don't have to slow down, it does it super quickly indeed. And getting routes onto a device is pretty straightforward as well, but I must admit, I don't really enjoy using the Garmin Connect app at all, but you can mostly avoid it if you want. If you use Strava, you can save a route and start a route on Strava, and it will automatically sync onto the Garmin, which is very handy as well. And you can also choose a route on a device itself, either by moving around the map screen, selecting a point, and it will navigate to that location, or choose a point of interest. Or what I prefer using, what I find really easy and simple, is whip out your smartphone, your iPhone, open up Apple Maps, go to where you want to go, say a coffee shop, top of the hill, select that pin and share it via Garmin Connect to your Garmin, and that works really quickly, and I find it much easier, and it works so quickly that I find myself doing that all the time if I'm navigating to a new location. So yeah, that's a really cool feature. That's probably the smartest way if you're riding somewhere new, going to a coffee shop, like I say, just use that, because most people will be carrying a smartphone with them, I'm sure of it. So the user interface is a nice improvement when you turn a device on, and it's quick and easy. Get straight into ride, or look at your past ride, look at your sort of recovery performance, choose a route or switch the activity profile. But it can get a bit confusing because there are notifications when you scroll up from the bottom, and when you scroll down from the top you get different menus, and then you scroll left and right, and it does take a little while to figure out where stuff is and where you have to swipe up and down, left and right to get to the menu you want. But most of the menu data information you need is where it makes sense, but I do feel it could be more intuitive and a bit more obvious where stuff is. So it's an improvement over previous Garmin's, but I still think there's room for improvement to make it even easier in terms of that user interface experience. So one of the reasons I personally switched from Garmin after using Garmin in the early days to Wahoo more recently was they weren't very reliable. Crashing, flaky firmware, Bluetooth issues, but they have definitely made big strides forward in this area. But with that said, when I first started testing this device 3 months ago, I did some big rides down to my parents' house and following a route, And for some reason, when I started following a route, within the first few miles and went off route, it crashed. It shut down and rebooted, and then it was fine. And I did that 2 or 3 times in the first few weeks, but since then, 2,500 kilometers later, it has been reliable. So touch wood, since those early gremlins, it's been reliable with no issues, no crashing, no flakiness, no real battle with getting a route onto it or uploading it to Strava after a ride. It's all seamless, and I'm happy to report that it is a reliable device, and there has been a firmware update or 2 since I started testing it, and one just last week, which I've been using as well. So I'm happy to report the reliability has been good. So yeah, a big improvement, and almost enough to make me switch back from Wahoo to Garmin, almost. So lots to like, some things I don't like, and one thing I definitely don't like is the price. £650 on its own, or $730 with a heart rate monitor bundle. Now, interestingly, when the Garmin Edge 800 launched way back in 2010, still one of my all-time favourites, it cost £400, which in today's money, adjusted for inflation, is £600. So maybe the price is about right now, given how prices have changed, and given how much better this is than the old 800 in terms of features, technology, hardware, screen brightness, and much more. But as nice as a big screen is, and it is lovely to use and follow a route, I'm still not personally sold on having such a big computer on my handlebars. I still prefer the small compact size of my Element Roam from Wahoo or the Edge 830. Just prefer having a small device on my handlebars, because when you first go from a small device like this to one like this, it does look a bit crazy on the handlebars, like having a smartphone on your handlebars. So that's something I'm not personally sold on, but the more I use it, the more I'm won over by the big screen and how nice and vibrant and easy to use it is. And clearly it's tech overkill for many people. Too many features, too much tech, just too much stuff. But I know lots of people like all the data at their fingertips, and there's something about the clean, sleek design and that bright, vibrant screen that feels like you're riding with something ultra modern. So if you want the best screen of any GPS bike computer available right now, and you want to follow routes and all the extra features you might or might not utilize, the 1050 is clearly the best Garmin ever, and for that reason the best GPS computer you can buy right now.